So we want to talk about your new album. It's called Another Me, and it's coming out next Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
So
Yep.
for folks who are unfamiliar with you, or this is their first time dipping into what you're doing, give us a little overview of what we can expect from the record.
Well, I mean, if you don't know any of my music, I guess the comparison between the first and second records are they don't really matter. But I will say that the new music for me, you know, I primarily play piano, but this new record for me, I really kind of experimented with different sounds a little bit more than I have previously. There are a couple songs where I'm playing the guitar and there's no piano. There's synth elements, drum programming, but I really wanted to incorporate my songwriting, which I think has very direct, honest, raw lyrics with this interesting play between very like acoustic, untreated elements, like, you know, just acoustic guitar, live piano, and then these kind of more electronic synthesized sounds, and kind of play with the balance between the two, which for me is new territory. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, and the album for me is very self-investigative and kind of touching on, you know, stuff I hadn't before. A lot of my songs before were very much about romantic relationships, and I wanted this record to make a point that there's more to me than just that, you know?
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned that your lyrics are very kind of direct and straightforward, which I noted as well, because a lot of times, and when I'm talking to people, you know, I talk to them about, well, what does this mean, and can you explain that? I don't feel like I need to ask you any of those questions because it is so direct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's, you know, the interesting thing, like as a songwriter, is that even if I'm writing something that's very direct and to the point, my interpretation, like my experience to the song is going to be shifting from the point that I write it, you know, from that point forward. So if I'm, you know, having to perform these songs in a year or two or five, which I might be, I have to find a way to continue to be connected to these lyrics that I've come up with. But I think that there's a way to like reinvent your own songs and find a way to connect to it. And even the couple songs I've released so far on this album, it's been interesting to hear people interpret things differently. Even with a direct lyric, you still kind of have people that have different life experiences that hear things a certain way because of that. So it's interesting.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you got some synths in there, some guitar, as well as the piano. Are you playing everything yourself on the record, or?
No, I did play a lot of it, which was really fun for me. I recorded the album here in LA with Leo Abrahams was the producer, and he's in London, but he flew out here for 2 weeks, which was really a blessing in disguise, because I think that sometimes if you don't have a deadline, projects can just kind of go on for eternity.
Right.
So we really only had 2 weeks, which was actually kind of exciting. And it was just Leo, myself, and a good friend of mine named Abe, and the three of us just basically did the whole thing ourselves, which was that was totally new for me, because the first album was very live. You know, I rehearsed the songs to death with the band, and we just went into the studio and recorded it. And this album, I had demos, but the songs were just kind of like seeds. They weren't fully finished. And
Right.
And we just went into the studio and kind of carved it out in the studio, which was totally different, like a new thing for me. But it was fun because I think it lended itself well to like, oh, let's try playing this instrument, or let's hit this thing, you know, stuff that I hadn't done before. So that was really fun for me.
Cool. And I want to touch on a couple of tracks that caught my attention. The first
Yeah.
one being Nobody Knows, because after hearing the first two tracks, which are kind of piano and strings and stuff, suddenly you kind of have this beat driven thing happening on Nobody Knows. And then it
Yeah.
goes into this dreamy kind of thing. So is that an example of kind of experimenting in the studio?
Yeah, that song was really fun for me to do because that was me playing guitar, and that was one of the first songs that I on the record that I'd written on the guitar, which for me, I primarily up until this point had done my songwriting on the piano, but I felt like I was kind of falling into the same patterns quite often, like similar progressions or similar melodies, and on the guitar not only do I not really know what I'm doing, but I'm also able to like detune it to something where I really have no clue what I'm doing. And on the piano, you're really limited to what you've got.
Yep.
So that like guitar part I had for a while, um, and kind of liked the like it just felt different for me, and it felt more experimental, and sonically it felt like something new and fresh, and funny enough, I the song is kind of about being stuck in this tough mental place where you don't feel like you can get to a point of creation because you feel stuck. And so I just decided I couldn't finish the song because of that, and I thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna write a song about that. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can swear, but I'm just gonna write
You
a
just
song.
did.
I just did. Sorry.
It's all right. It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, to answer your question, that was a fun song to do.
Cool. And the other one I want to talk about was the key, because it has this kind of very dramatic music happening, and the lyric, like you hold the lock, I've got the key, is kind of very empowering. I got the feeling. Is that what you had in mind behind that?
I'm glad that you felt that way. I think that song was really me like personifying my anxiety, and I wanted it to feel, I wanted the song to feel like a panic attack that I was trying to not let get too big, like bigger than myself. And so I wanted it to kind of have this dramatic, chaotic, pulsing feeling throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying the record's self-investigative, and a lot of that is me as a woman, as a queer woman, as someone that struggles with anxiety. I think that I wanted this record to capture all sides of this process of mine, and part of that is struggling with anxiety and feeling like I need to remember that I have the power to control it.
Right.
And so yeah, that's kind of like that, the lyric on that chorus of I've got my feelings, they don't have me. It's kind of like a reminder, like it's like that narrative I have to tell myself until I believe it. And so that song is kind of me trying to convince myself that I can control how I feel, as opposed to my feelings having complete control over me.
Gotcha. And of course, this album is being released in the middle of all sorts of chaotic things happening all over the world, and specifically in the States with the election and the pandemic and blah, 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 and the Black Lives Matter stuff. How do you feel about how your music fits in with that? Do you, especially because you're addressing kind of like queer identity, which is probably something that it needs to be addressed more than it has been. Will it kind of be taken up with all the other issues that are going on, or do you worry that it's kind of getting lost in the mix?
I mean, I don't. I think that I think that the good thing right now is that there really is like a transparency, and there's a dialogue happening that hasn't been as prominent as it should be in the past. And I think, if there is a silver lining with the current state of our government here in the States, I'll just put it that way. The silver lining, I think, is that young people are really engaged in a way that they haven't been before, and are really speaking up. And so, I don't think that it's a problem that the music's coming out now. If anything, I think it's always a good time, I think, to shed light on some of these issues. And I've said actually that this record in a weird way is like a coming out record for me. Even though I came out when I was 15, for me, it's like this idea of coming out like kind of where you can kind of reclaim some agency in your life. And I feel like I haven't really ever had to do that, which is an interesting thing, but I think that that's partly because I'm more masculine presenting. People, my sexuality's kind of always been assumed. And so I've never been able to like carve out that space for myself. And so, and with that, I think you gain a lot of important lessons on how to set boundaries and how to take up space in the world. And so I think, you know, I'm 29 now, but I actually think that it's taken me up until this point to learn those secondary lessons through the coming out process that I never got to really work through. Mm-hmm. So more than anything, I'm excited to be able to shed light on that and mental health and really just as a woman feeling like you're allowed to lean into your emotions, whether that be anger or, you know, sadness or, you know, there's a wide spectrum. And I think that that's something that I'm really happy to be able to talk about.
Cool. Yeah. You mentioned, you know, hopefully some change will happen in the States because younger people will get motivated to get out there and vote, which is, it's the same discussion that we have everywhere. We have it here in New Zealand as well. And for the past few years, it hasn't really happened. It hasn't taken effect. Maybe do you think this is a different situation now? And that, because to me, you're a young person, 29 is young.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I know it's funny. I feel like now, I mean, I do feel young, but I think that the generation even below me now is really like fired up and even teaching me things. But I do worry. I think that people are really standing up for things they believe in and speaking out and are engaged. But I do worry about that translating to voting specifically. I think that, you know, with this upcoming election, I think that there are still some people that feel like the options, if you're not going to vote for Trump, might not be progressive enough,
right.
Might not be radical enough. And I understand that, but I also think that it is critical that we don't have, you know, Trump for another 4 years. And and I think that at least with Biden and Kamala, there's an opportunity to push for those more radical changes and to push for, you know, things to be developed in a certain way. So we'll see what happens, but I really, really hope that people show up and do everything they can, which might have to be a lot to get their vote out this
exactly. So do you think, is there any end in sight as far as being locked down and getting out there and talking and meeting and playing in front of people?
I don't know. I mean, we've really mismanaged this whole thing here, but you know, in the meantime, right now I'm doing stuff online like everybody else. And honestly, I think it's going to be a while. I really don't see there being like substantial live shows until, I mean, I don't know, the end of next year or even 2022, if I'm honest. But
man.
But I know that other countries are starting to do certain things, and you can do things outside, and people will get creative. I think the good thing is that when live music comes back on both ends, there's going to be an extra layer of gratitude on my end to be able to have that connection in a room with people. And I think that people are going to be really excited to go out and see live music again. So I'll tour this album. It just might be a year after it comes out. You know?
Fair enough. Because I got to imagine that the people who come to see you in a show, because of the nature of your songwriting, they feel some kind of connection and they want to talk to you after the show and they want to share how they feel about it.
Yeah, and I don't want to like lose that experience. I mean, doing stuff online now is great because it's what we can do, and it's great that we have the ability to connect in that way. But you know, for me, it's like looking into a camera on my phone, and I can know that there are 50 people in there, but it's just different than being in a room with people, you know?
Absolutely.
So looking forward to having that again, for sure.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. I'm Much
Of course.
appreciated.
I
Hopefully
appreciate
sometime
it.
you can come down to New Zealand and play for us when
I
things
would
clear.
love to. You know, my parents actually took a trip to New Zealand in February, right before all the COVID stuff, and they said it was the best trip they've ever taken. So yeah, it's up on my list. So I'll let you know. I'll let you
Please
know.
do. All
All
right.
right.
Have a good day.
Thanks,
Thank you
Marty.
very much.
You too.